there are really only two main worldviews here to take into account. You're either an evolutionist and believe that life could spontaneously generate from non-living matter, or you are a creationist who believes that life is created by a personal, powerful being with an intelligent mind. What other choices do we have, really? It's either by coincidence or by design. And by design, I mean a designer, and by a designer, I mean God. So it's either by coincidence or by God. Now, if you're an evolutionist and watching this, I assume your answer to this question will have to be, well, yes. As far as you're concerned, if life exists on this planet through random chance mutations and natural processes, then why wouldn't life like us exist on another planet, given the right conditions, of course? So if the conditions are right, then life should or could exist somewhere else, right? Now, on the other hand, if you're a Christian, you might be thinking, well, why not? We know God is all powerful and able, so if he wanted to, he could create life on another planet. If he can, then why wouldn't he? Now, is there a way we can know if God did or would create life on another planet? Well, that's what we'll see in just a minute. But first, let's answer the question from the evolutionary worldview. What are the chances, knowing what we know, that life could exist on another planet? Now, for the sake of the evolutionist, I'm going to be very kind here, which is what I'm going to do throughout this talk. I'm going to make a lot of uncomfortable allowances. I'm going to ignore lots of important stuff, like, for example, the law of biogenesis, which tells us that life can't start from non-life. This is the law that tells us that no matter how suitable a planet is, life wouldn't just automatically start or exist. That wouldn't even happen here on Earth, which is 100% suitable for life. If you destroy all life on Earth, Earth will become barren. It wouldn't just spontaneously exist again, even though it's super suitable for life. Now, in case you're interested, this whole idea that life could just spontaneously exist from nothing has been disproven by Francisco Redi, an Italian physician. And this is what he said. He proved that the higher forms of life did not originate spontaneously by demonstrating that maggots come from eggs of flies. But believe it or not, because some people just never give up. In 1745, John Needham, an English naturalist and biologist, tried to disprove Francisco Redi's experiment. He added a chicken broth to a flask and boiled it. He then let it cool and waited. Microbes grew, and he proposed it as an example of spontaneous generation. But in 1768, Lazzaro Spallanzani, Italian biologist and physiologist, repeated Needham's experiment, but removed all the air from the flask, but this time no growth occurred. What a surprise. And finally, in 1864, Louis Pasteur, he nailed it once and for all. He did a series of experiments similar to those performed earlier by Needham and Spallanzani. Pasteur demonstrated that life does not arise in areas that have not been contaminated by existing life. Pasteur's empirical results were summarized in the phrase omni vivum ex vivo. In Latin, life is from life. But of course, evolutionists never give up. Those who support the idea of spontaneous generation claim that this did not apply to microbes. So they tried and tried to prove it with experiments. Two of the famous guys who did this are called Franz Schulz and Theodor Schwann, but they never succeeded. So Dr. Walt Brown, I don't know if you know him, he has a degree in mechanical engineering. He says these things. Spontaneous generation, which is the emergence of life from non-living matter, has never been observed. All observations have shown that life comes only from life. This has been observed so consistently, it is called the law of biogenesis. The theory of evolution conflicts with this scientific law when claiming that life came from non-living matter through natural processes. Evolutionary scientists reluctantly accept the law of biogenesis. However, some say that future studies may show life could come from lifeless matter, despite virtually impossible odds. Others are aware of just how complex life is and the many failed and foolish attempts to explain how life can come from non-life. They duck the question by claiming that the theory of evolution doesn't begin until the first life somehow arose. Still others say that the first life was created, then evolution occurred. All evolutionists recognize that based on scientific observations, life comes only from life. Okay, so he's saying, give it up, guys, it's the law. The whole idea originally came from the worshippers of idols who believed that the goddess Gaia can make life from stones. Well, at least these pagans believe that someone, a goddess, made life from stone rather than from nothing. That's still better than evolutionists that have to say that it's a non-guiding force. But for the sake of working out the probability of life existing on another planet, I'm going to ignore this law. This is one of those allowances I'm going to make, even though this law has never been falsified and it's always been verified. I'm also going to ignore something else. I'm going to ignore what they call the information found in DNA. We all know that DNA is complex structure that holds the blueprint for life. It's literally like a manual that you would use to build something sophisticated like a robot. It even tells us the order of each part how each part should be built and put together. It's full of information. And by the way, we have a whole scientific field dedicated to support this understanding of information. It's called information science. I'm specifically referring to a very special type of information called prescriptive information. Not Shannon or functional information. That's for people who study the information science here. The prescriptive information is what we find functioning in the DNA. So in fact, the DNA is so packed with so much intelligent information, we call it the language of life or the book of life. We have always seen that this kind of prescriptive information comes from an intelligent mind. This means, again, life couldn't just pop into existence on its own. So again, I'm ignoring this fact along with many other laws we have that make life possible in the first place. So these are all the allowances I'm making. In fact, this is such a big deal. These laws that make life possible, such a big deal, that makes people like this English astronomer, Fred Hoyle, say, a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. Fred Hoyle is saying, look, it feels like someone is deliberately making these figures work. It's so precise, it cannot be an accident. They're all beyond question. Yet I'm going to ignore all of them because that's what evolutionists actually do. When talking about life on this planet or any other planet, they ignore all these facts. I don't think you can be fairer than that.